Well, Tanisha, thank you so much for being here. You have so much expertise, and I'm really, really grateful that you have decided to be part of this project. So I have some questions for you, but we can just kind of see how it goes. So the first question I have, or the first set of questions, have to do with equity. So for you, what is energy equity, and why is it important?
So, taking into account the way that our systems have been set up, just especially in America, it's important to keep in mind that from the very beginning it hasn't been set up and to be equitable. And so we want to make sure as we go forward that that's something we keep in mind in foresight. To me, it means that not just that everybody gets the same amount, but we get put up to a place that actually makes sense, that actually brings justice and acknowledgement to what the past was, to know that as we move into the future, it makes sense into having a lifestyle that isn't struggling to just survive, but actually everybody can thrive in the space that we are in, energy equity.
And so what would that look like in terms of leveling the playing field? Because as you mentioned, all of our systems, all of our structures were built by and for certain set of the population, which has created the situation that we're in. So how can we, what are some ways to achieve energy equity given the vast history that has gotten us here?
So I think one way to achieve energy equity would be to, number one, remember that when we have new infrastructures going up, I think a lot of policies come into that space. But in communities of concern, there isn't a lot of new infrastructure. So there's another time that they get left out. So while we're making sure that new buildings are up to par with being more green energy spaces, that we also put effort into the communities of concern that don't have new infrastructure going up to actually bring them up to speed to where we need to be at.
So investing in the communities
Definitely.
that have been under invested in. Yeah, absolutely. So in your experience, what are some common barriers to achieving energy equity?
So one of the barriers I think to achieving energy equity is definitely the fact that policies are, like I said, into new infrastructure. I think that a big part is remembering policies need to have everybody at the table. So I'm fortunate enough to be at some of those tables myself. But when I'm the only one, it's me against, it feels like the world.
Is Tanisha's here again.
Yep.
Tanisha's here again. Like it's always you.
It is me.
Yeah,
And so, I feel honored and
Yeah.
blessed to be in this space, but I want it to become an environment where others feel comfortable to not only apply, but be accepted.
Yeah, you're definitely a trailblazer, and hopefully more folks not only are inspired by you and your actions, but are also motivated to act as you do. So it's really awesome. So lack of people in the spaces where their voices need to be heard, right? What role do you think renewable energy plays in promoting energy equity? So the energy sources that are not basically what we have, right? So the new technology that's cleaner and greener.
I think it's also more than that. So when it comes to the role that clean energy plays into energy equity, is the fact that a lot of the dirty fuels we are using is in spaces that are in those communities of concern, and the spaces that are affecting people's health the most. Also, when it's the dirty energy in those spaces where they're pulling oil from the ground right behind a baseball field, or in a community, especially in Los Angeles, when you just think about it. I mean, it's all over, from the corridors of the freeways to the port, right? All these spaces are having dirty energy. And so when we use clean energy in those spaces, hopefully we can lower and decrease the amount that we're having to stay there, bring health back up because of those terrible emissions that are in the air. Also, I think it will create new careers. So while those facilities that are pumping out all the dirty fuel are sitting there and saying, hey, we're giving you jobs, doesn't have to be the only jobs. Right. So having the renewable energy will allow a space for new career development. And my hope is that we start bringing that into our high schools and bring it to the curriculum so they can find those spaces when they graduate.
Yeah, exactly. And create those spaces too, right? Have you heard the term sacrifice zones? I mean, it's just so obvious. Like once you start paying attention, it's very, very clear where, these pumps are, where the the dirty industry goes, you know, they're not going into higher income, you know, neighborhoods.
Right.
They're going to the neighborhoods where people are already struggling and already dealing with these impacts. So, building on that, can you discuss any successful initiatives or programs that have improved energy equity? Like, are there any examples that you have experienced or been a part of that where you pointed to it and you're like, yep, this is what energy equity looks like?
So I think some advancements for energy equity have been a little bit around COVID, actually. Because of COVID, we've now moved into a more of a virtual zone. Because of us being more online, it's opened up the door, I think, to many people to be a part of it, not just because you can make it into one environment or coming to a campus or, you know, a facility. So I think, honestly, while we were all struggling around the COVID time, we all were locked in, the online usage ramped up. And because of that, it's opened the doors for so many of those spaces to be available for us now, to bring people that just couldn't make it with a vehicle, have kids, right, just in the spaces. So that's one. Being also during that COVID time, I was searching around what to do, trying to find something to get involved with.
Right.
And I found the Climate Ambassador program, which focused on energy and equity, environmental justice, and communities of concern. That's one really that I not only was investing my time into, but became a part of. The other is definitely the Carbon Literacy Project that I'm a part of, where we dive more deeper into that space of clean energy and what we can find solutions into. I think also in that it's because of the Carbon Literacy Project, it allows us to think of a project, like actually put it into place in action. And I love that. And I think that everybody has something different to offer. And so now that expands what we can reach and how we can be active in this space.
Right, right. That's awesome. I think those are some, I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think those are some really great programs. But I think folks watching or maybe thinking, okay, well, how can I participate? How can I contribute to that? All of this is possible because of very generous donors and individual donors and you know, corporates who give money, that kind of thing. And so there are ways for folks or organizations who might think, okay, well, this is like outside of anything I have any control over. They can actually support financially, which is actually giving money directly into these communities because it's individual people's lives and the actions that they're coming up with on their own that are appropriate for their communities, right? So thank you for mentioning those. When I thought about this question, I wasn't thinking about the programs we're actually a part of. So it should be the most obvious.
First thing that came to mind.
Yeah. So what future trends do you see in the area of energy equity?
So the future trends I see in energy equity, I think, stem back into going to more youth spaces. I think that as we bring up more youth, whether it's elementary school, middle school, is great to introduce it. But when we get to high school, I really want to push for more curriculum and pathway programs for those high school students to graduate and get out of the norm, I guess, of what has been and go into what needs to be and be creative in that space. So it doesn't always have to be labor induced. I mean, I want people to want to put solar panels on houses, and I want people to want to work on like electric vehicles and those electric buses. But even in the space of like grant writing, in a lot of our nonprofit space, there isn't enough people that are doing the work to actually get the funding we need to actually do the action. And so if we incorporate this into the high schools a little bit more, we can hopefully motivate and inspire, and not only for them, but their families.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many awesome programs connecting high schools and community colleges and four-year universities or even community colleges and industry. It makes perfect sense for there to be pathways from high school to energy careers, right? And like you said, not just labor, or not that installing solar panels is anything bad. It's a worthy, wonderful, needed job, but there's a lot more, right? In terms of the administration, working on teams, coordinating meetings. Oh my gosh, like there's so much that needs to be done in terms of just managing these organizations that are doing this good work. It would be really awesome to see more connections between the local energy nonprofits and climate nonprofits in San Diego with education, with high school to make that pathway that you talked about.
And I think that's just one, right? But I think in all education,
Yeah.
and I just want to start with there, right? But I think even the healthcare system, talking about the differences between, and this comes to equity. Some places, especially clinics and the communities of concern, have a whole lot different asthma issues, respiratory problems than maybe in some more affluent spaces. So keeping that in mind, how do we fund the healthcare system to make sure we're being equitable in that space, because they're dealing with a lot more than some others are.
Yeah, with the traffic-related air pollution, industry-related air pollution, that again is in communities of concern, right? That's the end of the questions for Unit 2, unless there's anything else you wanted to add.
I think the only thing to add maybe is how I came into the space.
Yeah. Oh, that's what. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, how I came to be into even finding myself into caring about energy equity and moving into a more, I think, a green space and just life has to deal with being brought up and raised in an environment that wasn't. So being myself and born and kind of raised into an environmental issues with not just gang violence that I'm dealing with, like physically that I can see, I'm also was having to deal with things that I can't see, which have to do with health issues and things around like even the fact that we have a landfill like not even a mile from where we live, that a school is on, right? And so knowing that now as an adult makes better sense to me of why I need and feel obligated to move forward into this space, because I feel like a lot of my community either are not aware, or because of generations of having to be in the culture of this, it's something that we're used to it. And I refuse to be used to things that we're not supposed to have to deal with.
Right.
I don't want to be used to things that are going to be detrimental to my health or my children, my family, or my neighbors, and just the planet in general. And so when I was in high school, I ended up going to a different high school than my community did, because where I went to elementary school, middle school, I had a pipeline, right? And so it was a college ready high school, and this was like in the beginning when they were first coming out. Actually, my class is the first class to ever receive college credit.
Oh, wow.
When you're in high school for English, which we had 3 people in that class, but we were all really good writers, and it stayed with me as I went on to Grossmont Community College. And while I was there as a single mom now, because getting out of domestic violence and just some other issues I had to deal with of trying to get out of my environment that was just toxic, I ended up having stage 4 cancer. And so dealing with cancer, when you're sick to an extent and you're in the hospital for a couple of months and it's just beeping and people are interrupting your sleep and you can't really do anything but think, I thought, if I get out of here and I survive this, what would I want to do? How do I want to be better for my just planet, or just being here on Earth? What can I do better? And so I dedicated myself back to studies when I got out and triple majored at SDSU in geography, sociology, and political science. Because I care a lot about people, I care about the environment very much, and because I'm a good writer, because I do it so well, and I know I do, that I didn't want to sit on someone's desk and not be pushed into legislation or where I needed to go and get into the right hands to actually make the action and make the moves. And so I realized there's a few things that I was doing at SDSU and pushing things through, and from being low income to my EBT, things I pushed out, and now that everybody in almost the nation now can accept EBT, I realized that one person can make a difference. And usually the people that make the difference are those that have to go through a struggle that will talk the loudest, that'll be the most passionate, and be the most aware of what is needed to actually make the sacrifices that are necessary, right, to actually find solutions.
Was there, I mean, the story you tell of, being in the hospital bed and having all this time to think, I mean, that sounds like a really pivotal moment. But you could have gone any direction. You could have thought, okay, well, I'm going to do this with the rest of my life, or this other thing. So why did it end up being like climate justice? So how did that become the one thing that rose to the surface in terms of being the most important?
Well, I mean, to elaborate even on a little more on it, right? So while I'm there, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-month-old.
Okay.
So I have a brand newborn baby, right? And I mean, I'm in there with a breast pump because I all of a sudden was sick out of nowhere, right? And I felt like this isn't fair. I already wasn't feeling justice just in life and just myself right now. And I realized too that, well, why is this happening? Why am I sick? And no one could tell me. And as I'm thinking back into, again, my community, what I'm around, I'm surrounded by freeways. I'm surrounded by lack of trees, right? So it's a lot of sun on us. And yes, I do have the melanin to take it, right? I don't sunburn as easily, but I do know through research and just data that we all need sunscreen. We all need to be taking care of ourselves better. And unfortunately, that wasn't always the case just growing up, right? That we just weren't aware. And so when you're sick, like I said, and at the time, Google is our friend to an extent where I can see everything I want in record amount of time. I started digging a little more of like, well, why could I be sick? What could have caused this? And so many things came up of my environment could be one of the reasons. And so I wanted to try to make the changes that, not to be that I might be the last one to go through this, but maybe we can decrease the amount of those that go through it because of their environment as well.
Yeah, I like earlier you said, you know, we don't need to just keep doing things because they've always been that way. You know, we need to forge a better future. And so I feel like a lot of folks, it's like, okay, this is my reality. I'm just gonna accept it and you know, do the best I can. But I admire that you're like, this doesn't have to be the reality for other people. It doesn't have to be my reality. It doesn't have to be the reality for future generations also.
I think to add to it too is that a lot of times we'll say when things happen in our communities, oh, we just want to get back to where we were. And I'm realizing now that that's crap.
Yeah.
Let's stop doing what we were because it wasn't good. So we want to be better than we were before.
Right.
So like, for instance, we had the floods that were in San Diego, right, not too long ago. And we say San Diego, but it was one part, it was a red-lined community of San Diego, Southeast San Diego, which is my community. And, you know, instead of replacing things that were bad for our health, which was those gas stoves, those gas dryers, we're moving to a space now with San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition to actually put electric stoves and electric dryers, right? So we don't have to return to what we were. We want to be better than we were.
Better, right.
And so when anytime something's lost, let's take advantage of that to replace it with better stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to be able to think, okay, well, what is better than what we have? Like what we have, like this is what we're used to, so we're familiar with, but then moving forward, like it could be better. But then to have that, the vision to see that, I don't think many people have that. So it's really, really inspiring.
Appreciate it.